just a quick reminder, excuse me, please don't forget to hashtag skills 2020. And also don't forget to visit our virtual exhibition, engage with the exhibitors that are on standing by, and just to know that as you engage, prizes will be won. So we're looking forward to giving 2 participants this afternoon some giveaways. So make sure that you look into that. Don't forget to sanitize. I was not coughing because of COVID. I was coughing because of thirst. So make sure that where you are seated and where you are at, you are sanitized, you're having something to drink, and you are jotting down your notes, because we'd like to hear your feedback. We know that there were some challenges with logging ins. As we said yesterday, we're testing the capacity of our internet provider. But if you can't, or you're still battling to log into the link, please do visit YouTube. We are streaming live on YouTube as well. The next and the last panel discussion of the day is quite interesting for me. We speak about agriculture and food security. This is an industry that will never die, because food is life and life is food. So we are going to be welcoming our panelists who will help us answer critical questions, particularly as we are confronted with the COVID-19 pandemic. We want to know, what are the effects of this pandemic on agricultural productivity? We also want to know that what are the important remnants and aspects of food security that we need to consider in this day and age moving forward. So we do have our panelists joining us live. I will be introducing the following speakers who will be aiding us in this discussion. And we do know that agriculture being an important industry, we have our president of the agricultural, or rather the African Development Bank, who speaks about a crucial investment in the agricultural sector. He goes by the name of President Akiwumi Adesina, who's from Nigeria. And he says the size of food and agriculture in Africa will rise to $1 trillion by 2030. So, that's quite a hefty stat right there. And we see that the population in Africa currently is 1.2 billion, and this will double to 2.5 billion by 2050. And this speaks to the nature of the importance of agri-business. So we look forward to engaging further with the following panelists. So without any particular order, I wish to welcome Zamoguhle Twala, who is the founder and CEO of AgriCool. I also wish to welcome Mr. Emmanuel Okose, who's a doctoral researcher at UNISA Graduate School of Business. Also, Mr. Wynand Esbach, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Agri Colleges International. We also wish to welcome Mr. Christoph van der Riede, who's the Deputy Executive Director of Agri SA. Welcome to all our panelists. We are now about to go live as we prepare ourselves. So what we'll do is that each of our panelists, or each of our speakers, will give us a 3-minute opening remark on the particular topic, your thoughts, and what you think about agriculture and food security, current context, and also our future context as well. And then we will then engage from that state, and I'll be asking you questions. And of course, we are receiving questions from our viewers through our chat room on Zoom and YouTube. Awesome. Okay, fantastic. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, Bang.
Morning, Taba.
Morning. Thank you. So I see we only have you, Christo, and Wynand. So perhaps, Mr. Reader, you can start with your opening statements around, the organization, what the organization does, and of course, your perception or idea around agriculture and food security. And then Wynand, you can follow after that.
Good morning, and good morning to all of your viewers. It's indeed a privilege to share a few thoughts with you this morning. Agri SA is a more than 100-year-old organization, been involved in agriculture for more than a century. And we consist of 9 provinces, also approximately 25 commodity organizations, as well as more than 50 big corporates that are part of the value chain. So Agri-SA's big job is to collaborate with government to ensure a conducive environment in which agriculture can flourish. Yes, our big focus is on commercial agriculture for export purposes as well as for local consumption. Export has done very well over the past few months. We've seen export of deciduous fruit, export of table grapes to the rest of the world, very big exports of citrus recently. Our oranges and our lemons are sought after all over the world due to the high vitamin C content. And we've seen also a very good maize crop. So yes, agriculture, commercial agriculture in South Africa is in a very good space. One of our big tasks is obviously to deal with the legacies of the past. And one of the big drives for me personally is to see to what extent one can leverage the current commercial system. It's a commercial system that includes players on the import side, especially your tractors, your implementation, your technology, especially your seed technology, fertilizer technologies, etc. Then you've got your farmers that bear the biggest brunt, and they are the risk carriers in the true sense of the word. Without them, you won't have an agricultural value chain. And then obviously you've got your agro-processing companies and your retailers, your very highly sophisticated logistical network, and then a whole lot of other players that make sure that the food that is being produced, the food that is being processed, that all of that lands on the table of our people. And that is the space in which we operate. And yes, the question is, how do we then leverage the system to bring in other players to build an inclusive and a growing agricultural sector?
Phenomenal. Thank you very much, Mr. Reed. Wynand?
Thanks, Tabang. Yeah, AgriColleges International. I'm the COO of AgriColleges International. We're a relatively young company. We like to call ourselves young, but we've been busy with our project for the last 5 years.
Right.
Just investigating the whole skills development sector and developing skills in the farming and agricultural world. And we realized very early on in our investigations through our needs analysis that it's not going to be as easy as we thought it would be. It's not just go and build a college and off we go. And because of the limitations with space and everything that goes around all that, with the bricks and mortar institutions, we went to go and look for technology that would enable us to bring a very practical, task-orientated skills development sector, such as agriculture, into an online environment. And through the use of innovative technology from across the world, we've managed to bring that technology to our students. And in 2018, we launched our first online agricultural courses. And to date, we've graduated over 800 alumni, with a whole lot more enrolled for the coming few courses. And yeah, there's a lot to be done in agriculture and skills development. And it's a privilege for us to be part of this plan and taking our country forward in a very exciting and honorable and what we like to call a cool career, where agriculture is not always seen as the go-to and the cool career. That's what we set out to do from day one, is to go and make agriculture cool again. And with technology, I think there's a real opportunity for us to bring our youth into this sector and show them that it is a very viable career. And as we've seen now during the lockdown, agriculture has been the only sector that's grown. So we're very excited about the future.
Okay, thank you very much, Wynand. Mr. Twala, welcome. Okay, you still on mute, Mr. Twala, or I think your volume is down.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's a bit better.
Can you hear me?
Much better, much better. Yes,
Oh,
sir.
thank you. Awesome. So thank you so much. My name is Samusa. I'm a co-founder and the current CEO at Agrico. So basically what we're doing at Agrico, we are making agriculture cool. I think we're doing something almost similar to what Agrico is doing. So what we're doing, we are helping smallholder farmers with an access to market. We are providing them with an access to market. We have partnered with some reputable retailers, Boxer, Safe, and many others. And also what we have done, we have organized the informal market in Pietermaritzburg where we enable informal traders to order so they can get the produces from the smallholder farmers, because we know one of the biggest pain points in the agri sector is that farmers, they can farm, but somehow they also better sell what they've been producing. And also on the other hand, we've created a holistic system of a crowdfunding where we enable ordinary citizens to contribute or to empower smallholder farmers by lending their money to them to buy seedlings, to buy agricultural input. And when the produce grows, when we take it to the market, and from then they're going to get some return. So basically what we're trying to do is to solve the issue of lack of financial inclusivity in the agricultural sector, because even by your agri-banks also perceived as a high-risk business, and also for smallholder farmers, there's not so much data around them, so that is why they struggle to access finance. So we are solving those two problems: the lack of access to market and also the lack of access to finance through a crowdfunding model. So in a nutshell, that's what we're doing. So obviously we are a very young company. We're turning 1 year this year in July. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, but we've grown tremendously in this space.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, Zamogut. I'll be coming back to you with a question. But before we do that, maybe let me go back to you, Mr. Reed, Crystal, just to then ask, with COVID-19 pandemic that is happening, what are the effects on agricultural production?
We were quite fortunate in that before the lockdown, obviously we have learned what has happened in China and all over the world.
Right.
And the implications of a lockdown on any community. So the various farming organizations, that's AFASA, NAFU, TAU,
Yes.
Agri-SA, all of us and AGBIS, we have engaged with government, with the
Right.
Minister of Agriculture. And I must really say, I was so impressed by her leadership, because she very quickly grasped that if we have a lockdown and people don't have access to food, we will have serious, serious trouble in the country.
Yeah.
And so they made a couple of mistakes right at the start. They closed down the market, and we said, but you cannot close the market because you've got literally thousands of hawkers that frequent the market, buy food,
Right.
take it back to the townships. And people don't realize we've got a very sophisticated food distribution system. You've got your markets, you've got your truckers, you've got your hawkers, you've got your big retailers, and all of them play a critical role when it comes to food distribution. And that's where the opportunity lies. How do we then assist your hawkers that frequent the markets to take their business to the next level? People often forget that. People often say, yeah, but where's the entrepreneurship? The entrepreneurship is there. And these people have been operating for all of their lives, whether they've got a small fruit stall or a big stall or whatever. I can remember the village where I come from, there was always 2 or 3 uncles that would go to the market and come back with a truckload full of the freshest vegetables, and we could buy it and feed our families like that. So I think a government has responded well. Obviously, one thing that we also then brought to the table was that let's have a national food aid scheme, because thousands of people have informal jobs. Thousands of people have lost their jobs. And in that space, Agri-SA has launched a national food aid campaign. So we've requested all of our farmers to come to the table and donate food to communities. And our aim was really to establish a 1 billion rand food aid drive. Just last week, we were in Limpopo, the Free State, KZN farmers are all operating in that space in the Western Cape. And the amazing thing is, farmers of various backgrounds all contribute, to this. But one would have really loved government to be more involved in that space, because the last thing that you want is for people to go hungry. It is not only unconstitutional, but it's inhumane for people to go hungry. Given that background, agriculture overall, and I've alluded to it earlier, has done quite well. So on the supply side, I think given the fact that our farmers could continue producing, with the exception of 2 or 3 sectors such as the wine, tobacco sector, and the wool export sector, overall on the supply side we are well stocked. But your bigger challenge sits with the demand side. Remember, our restaurants were closed.
Yes.
There were limitations in terms of, you must be back home at 6 o'clock, or at level 5, people couldn't even leave their homes. They could only leave it for the bare essentials. So that has distorted the supply chain to a very, very large extent. But I think that has created a lot of opportunities for Mr. Twala's business and for many small-scale farmers to have a proper understanding of what those opportunities are all about, and to access those opportunities so that our country and our people remain well fed.
Sure. Thank you very much for those contributions, Mr. Christo, and quite critical to bring forth that illustration of how demand and supply has thoroughly been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, and it also then says, how do we evolve and how do we innovate better strategies to ensure that this value chain is either reinvented or is not further disturbed. Mr. Wynand, I think maybe if I could just go back to the online studies that your institution offers. How many students are then absorbed in the industry through SMMEs? Like, how many of them graduate and then start their businesses, and how many of them find employment? Does your institution aid in assisting with internship opportunities, or then helping them take their diploma, their degree, and then transitioning it into a viable business in the agricultural sector?
Yeah, what we realized very early on is that we're going to have to offer the students a little bit more than just a plain agricultural qualification, certificate, or a diploma. We did a whole lot of homework on the curriculum that's available out there, and one of the speakers yesterday, I think it was in one of the opening addresses yesterday, mentioned exactly this, where it's been 3 decades since the curriculum was last updated. We bumped into that very early on and realized that the last time that the NQF4 curriculums were really updated in agriculture was in 2003. Now, how do you teach a student technology or anything basically that was last updated in 2003, where you're working in an industry that's got technology taking over on a daily basis? You have to make it relevant to the current studies. So when we started implementing new changes into our curriculum and making it more modern and bringing our coursework up to date, the first lot of graduates that went through that course, the industry sat up and said, this is interesting. Here's a student that's now got a certificate that is actually able to identify certain things that a student that comes from a traditional curriculum course cannot do. And we're talking not only technology like drones and those sort of modern things, we're talking very basic irrigation equipment and all those things that were last updated in 2003. So the uptake of our students was very good, and it continues. Just this week again, we've been approached by a number of people saying to us, please put us in touch with some of your current students that will complete their studies in the 2020 year so that we can interview them for employment in 2021.
Lovely.
So the industry is definitely reacting positively to it. And then we're also bringing in a lot of our coursework, we're bringing in life skills or soft skills. A lot of people refer to it as soft skills, where we're teaching students how to do from the very basics, like how to write a CV, how to conduct
Right.
yourself in a business interview, how to
Mm.
work in a group as an individual. These are
Yep.
things that's not being taught anymore at school
Mm.
level. And to employ someone, they need to have these basic life skills. So these
Yep.
are things that we are teaching them as part of the curriculum, which makes a huge difference. And that also enables them to present themselves better when they go out there looking for employment. And the agribusiness side that we've brought in allows a lot of our students to go and start their own thing if they can't find employment. We've got so many success stories. I can keep you busy all day with students that's done a 6-week introduction course to plant production, and they've gone
Wow.
back to their community and they've gone and grown their own vegetables, and they've gathered a whole lot of friends around them, and they're growing vegetables, and they've expanded, and they're now supplying a supermarket in town, and
Wow.
they now
Amazing.
applying for funding to buy a small piece of land. That's the success that we want. That is what's
Yep.
going to grow the economy of this country, making
Absolutely.
our youth look after themselves, because it's also implemented into their communities. We're working with a local school, a rural school that happens to be on our farm, so it's very convenient for us to do it. It's a government school. They've got half a hectare of land, but they have no knowledge. So we are now
Yep.
training one person through our college to
Yep.
become the leader in growing their vegetables. And through private funding that we've managed to raise, we are starting the project now of building, well, the greenhouse is built. They're going to start growing their own vegetables. That vegetable production will go back into the feeding scheme for the school,
Wow.
feeding 140 children twice a day. And then
Sure.
any excess vegetables will be sold to the community or given to the community. And any funding raised through that will start running a little business for the school.
Yes.
We're teaching them in beekeeping. They're going to start doing bottling of honey at the school,
Wow.
branding
Wow.
it under their own brand and starting to sell it. So they fund the school, and they're expanding their community.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to be with our youth. We need to create those opportunities and assist them in creating their opportunities for themselves, other than just relying on employment from the corporates.
Absolutely. And I believe institutions of your nature, Mr. Barnard, must be emulated, must be populated, must be known about, because these are when we speak about practicality or converting theory into praxis, this is what we're talking about, to say, how do we then create value chains within our communities?
Yes.
How do we develop a local economy within our communities?
Exactly.
Because if we don't fix that local economy, or if we don't invest in localization, then our regional economy and our national economy is still going to be challenged. So
Exactly.
quite insightful. Then I look forward to then divulging further. Just later on, I'll come back to you and ask you other questions about partnership. But in the meantime, I just want to welcome Dr. Emmanuel Okose, who's a doctoral researcher from UNISA Graduate School of Business. So welcome to you, Emmanuel. But before we get to you, let me go to Mr. Twala. I just want to find out, Zamoguhle, what are the challenges that you've encountered around access to markets as you've started AgriCool, particularly in your community and so forth? Because we know access to market is a critical phenomena when it comes to business, and we've had it as a challenge, not only regionally and so forth, but continentally as well. This is why we have your African Continental Free Trade Agreement to enable better access to markets. So what are the challenges that you have encountered around that?
Okay, cool. Thank you for the question. So I've been a farmer myself. Like, fortunately, I'm solving a problem that I've experienced at hand. So
Okay.
basically, what was happening is that when I was still a small-scale farmer, promo that you obviously as a farmer you aspire to supply your big guys like your Shoprite and many other
Right.
retailers. But the
Yeah.
problem that we had was that those retailers they want you to have your food safety certificate when you
Okay.
want when you need that like you need a lot amount of money and you need people to come to your farm to vet, you need to have your PEP and many other requirements which are needed, which requires money. As a small scale farmer, maybe operating on a very thin cash flow and also don't have enough money to get those requirements. And also that's why when I was a small scale farmer, I pivoted and considered to work with informal markets because for them, as long as it looks fresh, they're able to sell. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, those are the challenges of that with access to market. Even at us at Agrico, initially when we started, we were just targeting the informal market. I mean, you've mentioned yourself, you spoke about the local economy. That has been our main goal to try and make sure that you produce locally, this gets sold locally as well. Because
Mm.
we just believe that, as Black people, as Black smallholder farmers, it's going to be difficult to solve our economic challenges if we take our money outside outside the community faster than we aim it. So we've had like quite a number of challenges, and fortunately, we then pivoted to the formal market where we partnered with other retailers. Still now, remember, still in the within the informal market, we're still having some challenges. It's not every product that we can still supply because
Right.
ourselves as a company, we need to have to meet some certain standards. The pack house, you can imagine we're a startup and we're still bootstrapped and we don't even afford to have those facilities as it.
Mm.
Yes.
Mm. Okay. Thank you very much. Emmanuel, can we receive your opening remarks? And if you could tell us your doctoral research, how's that going? What is it about? And also your contributions or your thoughts around agriculture and food security.
Well, thank you very much, Tabang. Firstly, just a quick check. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
All right. Hi, everyone. My apologies for popping up or popping in late. I was having some technical issues here in Limpopo. We're having the weather is very overcast, so I'm not
Right.
sure what's happening on the technological front, with our cell phone towers and all of that.
Right.
But and it's quite uncanny because now I want to talk a little bit about the role of technology, or I would like to even incorporate the role of technology. And here we are having this kind of a challenge in this day and
Right.
age where we're supposed to be shifting to 5G and its increased capabilities. But yes, getting right into it. Just a correction: I'm not yet a doctor. That's still in the pipeline. It's important to make those distinctions,
Yeah.
particularly in academia. You do not want, my professors to be wondering where I got that doctorate from, perhaps from a
Declaration,
private
sure.
college or somewhere. Yeah, so it's important to make that distinction. I'm still in the pipeline. I caught a little bit the tail end of Waynard's last remarks
Yes.
on YouTube, just as I was struggling to get connected. And can you still hear me?
Yes, you're very clear.
All right, excellent. And I'd like to just start off by saying that my former research was in franchising, and currently I'm looking at sustainability in African enterprises of different types, and trying to determine how can we speed up that transition into comprehensive sustainability, if I may call it that, because there is too often a narrow focus on the environmental aspects of it. And I think the people side really suffers a lot.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things which is of vital importance, particularly to an economy like South Africa's. It's quite clear that, the people side of sustainability really has to be tackled. And as I said, Waynard's tail end of what he was saying, the sustainability aspects came out in a couple of those case studies that he mentioned. And I really liked that. And I would like to see in future how we can leverage a franchise model in agriculture, because I am of the belief that franchising can be implemented across all different sectors and industries, perhaps not in the way in which we would traditionally see it, because most of the time when we think franchising, we're just thinking of our fast food outlets and
Yeah.
chain stores and that sort of a thing. But I mean, we have franchising in mining, we have it in manufacturing, and also I believe that we can implement it in agriculture. So a franchise-based model will allow a full integration of all actors, and we could also integrate the training aspects, because one of the things that we need to shift away from, and COVID has actually shown us this or demonstrated this, is we do not necessarily need to have people sitting in schools or educational institutions for years at a time before they start contributing to the economy by actually doing what they are being trained to do. So the training has to happen in tandem with the practical aspects of it, or with them actually operating in whatever sector or industry or whatever. So in agriculture, as Wynand demonstrated, when when these young people, particularly we have our focus on the youth, because that's where really we've got some low-hanging fruit. You know, there's youth that are sitting out there that could be put into these type of programs that Wynand has demonstrated, and actually immediately start contributing to the economy through their own projects and so on. I've looked at some examples in my research of initiatives like what they call the Urban Agriculture Initiative, where they were putting up rooftop gardens, and also I've looked at some examples or other models as what we've seen in East Africa and Nigeria, where where we've got what is called crowd farming now, where a crowd financing model, and I'm sure Crystal will be able to speak a bit to that. A crowd financing model is being applied in the agricultural context, and that sort of caters a little bit. It's an innovative approach to the finance issue. So these are some of the things that I've been looking at and with interest. And my key question, and what I would like to see us taking away from this, is what kind of plan can we put forward? I recently watched Thabo Mbeki, and he harshly criticized the National Development Plan, and he was talking about that it's not a plan per se. It's more of a for lack of better words, theoretical document. It's a vision. So what he was saying in there is something that some of us could align with, and that is that we need concrete plans of action as to how. We've got a lot of visions, we've got a lot of theory, we've got a lot of experts, we've got a lot of knowledge that is sitting. So the issue is, how do we then action this knowledge, and how do we then bring all the key players together, similarly to what they've been doing with the Fourth Industrial Commission, the Presidential Fourth Industrial Commission. So we need to have something similar, but focused specifically on skills, and how can we then ensure that the current misalignment between skills that are existing, skills that are being trained, or that are being put to people right now, that misalignment between those skills and what the current constantly changing economic landscape. So how can we ensure that the skills we're given to our young people are skills that will allow them to be able to constantly evolve in this constantly evolving economic systems that we find ourselves in. So as I said, the COVID has really brought to the fore the need for skills that are relevant and fundamental skills that allow people to constantly be learning, to constantly be reiterating their business models and so forth. So those are some of the things that I've been looking at, and I would like to see us coming up with some sort of solid plan going forward. Thank you very much, Tabang. I think I've spoken quite a bit.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. That was quite a elaborate intro and offertory to the theme. So thank you very much for that. And I think you've actually helped us to maybe build on that. Just on the issue of crowdfunding, I mean, Zamoguhle from AgriCool, you work with crowdfunding for smallholder farmers. Maybe you can take us through that model. Has it worked? How can it be improved? And then Crystal, if you can also, I think from your space as Agri-SA, how can we, make sure that crowdfunding or a crowd financing model reaches greater areas and rural communities that are in need of this amount? And I think Zamoguhle had mentioned the amount of, I don't want to say red tape, but bureaucracy when it comes to applying for certification And look, these are the standard operating procedures. These are the certificates that we need to get businesses going. But my challenge is that a lot of the people, like small scale farmers or farmers in rural communities, how do they don't think certificate. Their knowledge is, this is the soil, this is the ground, and this is how I make sure that I generate crop from this. So as Agri SA, Mr. Christo, how are you assisting rural areas and farmers to get over or get past the bureaucratic requirements where certification is concerned? But also, after Mr. Twala has answered, maybe you can then extend on the crowd financing model, if Agri SA has looked into that, and what have been the benefits of that thereof. Mr. Twala, maybe you can kickstart us on the issue of crowdfunding for smaller holder farmers. Has it worked? How can it be improved? Over to you. Okay, we still can't hear you. Can you increase your volume? I think it's the
Sorry.
ear.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Much better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Okay, so with crowdfunding, I mean, when you ask has it worked, you had to look at it from the two angles. From this
Yeah.
angle, would be one, have you been able to raise funds from the public? And
Okay.
secondly, from the side of farmers, like have been able to have them repaying the loans and everything. So
Yeah.
fortunately, as Agricole, we've had like huge traction when it comes to raising funding. We didn't even struggle.
Yeah.
Actually, we've raised over 2 million rand from the public in terms
Well
of
done.
raising
That's
finance.
great.
So that has been going exceptionally well. And I know other crowdfunding as well, and they've done much better than them. And the reason behind it is that people relate to agriculture. If you're telling someone, you know what, you give me your money, I give it to a farmer, they grow food, you take it to the market, and only then you get money plus profit. So it becomes easy, something that everyone can relate to. Maybe if you talk about crowdfunding in other aspects, some people they still battle, they ask a lot of questions. But for us, the reason why we had traction was that because everyone could relate to what we do. So when it
Right.
comes to with financing farmers, it becomes very difficult now because you might struggle to get most of the farmers that we are financing are farmers from remote areas, from rural areas.
Right.
So most of them, like the farming community is made up of an age group. Like you don't get a lot of youth in. Well, that's one of the problems that you're also trying to solve. If you come to
Yes.
them and tell them about the finance, don't understand. Like, if you
Yeah.
give me this amount of money, how am I supposed to pay it back? And also,
Yes.
I mean, their businesses are not managed formally. They've not registered the company, and they don't have any bookkeeping. Like they can't even do budget. So those are the challenges we also had from the farmers as well. And again, we also had like a big challenge we had was with one of repayment because this is more of like lending. We need business lending. Especially we business lending by doing market. Initially, when
Right.
we started as a financing company. We don't want to do any market linkage. But all of a
Mm.
sudden now we finance these farmers, realize that no, now market becomes a great. For us to use this lending, we need to also do the market linkage also. And
Mm.
again, how do you do risk? We need insurance as well because we need to insure the crops. I mean, most of the crops are not insurable according to the insurance. And again, even if they are insurable, there's not even enough data because the insurer needs to know when are they planted. They need to know a lot of things which small farmers don't have. And,
Yeah.
and another one would be repayment. See, some of the farmers, we give them, obviously, we don't give them money. You pay, buy the seedlings, and have them delivered to the farm so they start doing hard work. So
Right.
from there, when we start to harvest, you find that when you come to the farm, it's cabbages. When you get there, like some of the cabbages, they've been harvested and sold behind your back without even us knowing. So we
Mm.
also had that challenge again where some of the farmers we didn't pay back money because remember these people are low income earners. So as soon as they've got and they feel something that is worth like a few 100,000, they start going crazy selling because they've got a chance to have like a lot of money. So how we've been able to solve that problem was with incentivizing farmers. If you finance farmers, you can finance them in group of five, for example. You tell them each like 10,000 rands, but you guys are liable for each other. If one default, you guys will pay the full amount. So they are
Mm.
liable. It's more like they look after each other to say, okay, a plant is sprayed. So it's more like you have to incentivize. It would never work without incentive. Because you can't rely that farmers they are going to do the right thing. You need to come up with strategies and incentivize them to do the right thing. Because anyway, if it's a crowdfunding, most likely it's going to be financing smallholder farmers through crowdfunding. Most likely it's going to be collateral free because they've got no collateral. They that's the problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And then again, it backfires that now if they
So
don't say
true.
anything against them.
Mr. Reed, can you extend on that? I think Zamuhle mentioned critical points there, especially around collateral, that sometimes the small scale farmers or people that are applying in the agricultural space are denied opportunities in inverted commas because of things like they don't have collateral or they don't have funding to get the paperwork done. So maybe you can just extend on some of the things that he mentioned, particularly on the issue of crowdfunding as well. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, and thank you very much, Mr. Twala, for these inputs. And I've grouped it now according to 4 categories. One is the issue of quality.
Yeah.
Right? South African consumers are very, very quality conscious.
Yes.
You are not going to get away from that. And I'll talk to that. How do we overcome that in practice? And I think that's one thing that we in the food industry, we can never sort of compromise. Quality, because South African consumers, they will give one look at a potato, and it doesn't look like a good potato, they will just walk past. The second thing is the issue of aggregation. That for me is absolutely critical. And we need to understand, how do we then, as a collective, put ourselves in the position to get access to proper funding. Then the issue of funding and the issue of collateral, and then the fourth one is water. I always say land is not the problem, water is the problem. We need to start addressing those. So in terms of quality, how did we assist farmers? Through Agri-SA and through our various commodity organizations to help them overcome the issue of quality. In the Eastern Cape, the wool growers have identified approximately 4,000 black farmers who are in the wool growing space. They made a very, very interesting discovery. They discovered that these farmers can produce wool of export quality. And if you sell your wool on the international markets, you get a lot more money than you get it here in South Africa. So the thing that they did was they introduced a RAM scheme, right? In other words, RAMs with good DNA. And government, I think Treasury via the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform, they made about 15 million rand available. These RAMs were purchased. They were introduced to the flocks of those farmers. And within a space of 10 years, they are now exporting quality wool to the rest of the world. By doing a very, very simple thing, introducing the DNA. The red meat producers are doing the same thing. I think black farmers at this point in time have in their possession approximately 50% of all cattle. That's a massive, massive market. But what is the problem? Quality of the meat, the calving rate of these animals are not very good. You spend a lot of money to grow that cow, and then you expect that cow to produce calves. And if you don't keep your eye on that cow, it will not be able to produce calves. That's how you create your wealth, right? So introducing the right, feeding mix, teaching people to ensure that that cow gets the right amount of minerals, etc., etc. And then introducing good quality bulls into that flock. And that has changed the fortunes of many, many farmers. And that's where the franchise model actually comes in, because you cannot apply a franchise model like, for example, Kentucky franchises in the agriculture industry. We must look at how do we perhaps develop a franchise model around these things that I've mentioned, the quality DNA, quality seed, etc., etc. Very interesting. Grain SA has about 10,000 black farmers that are producing barley for a big company like AB InBev. Obviously, due to the lockdown and the ban on alcohol sales, these farmers are now in trouble because they cannot sell their stuff to a big company like AB InBev. But that's the nature of farming. One year you've got a very good year, you've got a good price, and towards the next year everything just falls flat due to either all kinds of natural factors or biosecurity, etc. And farming is a high risk business. It's a high risk business. You need to understand,
Yeah.
this kind of business. Then very critical, and I can go through the list. The wort grow, the fruit growers, all of them have these kind of schemes. If you look at Woolworths, you go to Woolworths for table grapes. What kind of table grapes do you see nowadays in Woolworths? Just go and see what kind of grapes. It's now grapes that no more round in shape. It's now either
Yeah, oval.
round.
I know. I can testify when I'm Mr. Christo. And they're expensive.
They're expensive. But that kind of technology, and remember when I use the term technology, I'm not talking about drones and stuff like that. I talk about seed technology. I talk about all kinds of variants and stuff like that. These things come from overseas. You know what a farmer must pay in terms of royalty just to produce that kind of grape. And then he must pay all kinds of other stuff just to produce it. But the reward is very big because Woolworths wait for open arms for them to bring that stuff. That's where the franchise opportunity sits. It's more an enabling thing as opposed to a sort of stationary thing. A franchise like Kentucky is stationed at a particular place. There's certain rules and regulations. And I think we need to just shift. Then, if you look at how the foreigners are doing business in South Africa, that for me is absolutely significant. They've learned the art of economic organization. In other words, the Somalis, the Pakistanis, they don't do their business one by one. They aggregate. They come together. They put their money. These guys come here with nothing. But somehow they find a way. They've taken over the spaza shops in Soweto. They're running their businesses. If you see the amount of wealth that they've created, it's just astonishing because they've learned the art of economic organization. We're very good at political organization. Given our context, our history, it's understandable. But we need to shift towards economic organization. It's one thing to talk about economic freedom, but economic freedom doesn't put meat and rice and potatoes on your table. It's
so
economic organization. It's economic mobilization. If you look at the Jewish community, at the Afrikaner community, at the Muslim community, at the foreigners that are operating in South Africa, how they operate as a collective. That aggregation, and we need to explore that. We need to find a way to address the shortcomings when it comes to finance. Then in terms of water, and I think, you cannot farm without water. Even if you have this amazing new type of farming, aquaponics, and all of this fancy stuff. We need to address the issue of water. Now, there's no water shortage in South Africa. We've got a problem with water management. Right?
Yes,
our municipalities, we've got a massive coastline of thousands of kilometers. The Israelis, they produce water from seawater. You can take all of your cities along the coast from the grid. You can make more water available. So it's one thing to blame everyone for your circumstances. But we need to start applying our minds and come together as a unit, mobilize amongst each other. I mean, if you look, amazing story, and it's not that Black people are not economically organized. If you look at how the ladies come together in the townships, they put the money together. What is it called? The stokveld. Stokvelds, my dear, generate approximately 40 billion rand in savings. But what do we do with that money? We go spend it over Christmas on the most expensive biscuits.
The clothes.
And clothes. Yeah, and that's why I don't worry about hair, because that's another debate for another day. But we spend millions importing these nice hair from overseas.
You can say weaves. It's safe to say weaves.
Weaves.
Or horse's tail. Yeah.
Yes, and I've got nothing against those things, but I'm just thinking with 40 billion, we can buy farms, we can put our factories, we can put up our own shops and stuff like that. We must stop playing victim. And I'm not told in terms of what colonialism and apartheid has done to our people, because I'm also Black. And I'm just saying, it's now for Black people to come together, apply their minds, and grasp the opportunities that other people are grabbing that's lying here right in front of us. I always say,
Christo,
just look around,
let's take it a notch.
Are there.
Christo, let's take it a notch further and say, not Black people coming together, but people coming together.
People, yes, of course.
Because diversity and inclusion, I think,
yes,
it's been undermined for the longest of time, you know, where we have different ethnicities, different cultures, different backgrounds coming together. I mean, in Germany alone, for them to build a bridge, they get 6 top think tanks in the world from different countries and different continents, and they give them a budget and they give them a time frame. And that's the importance of diversity. But Chris, I'm telling you, you've sparked so much in me. I even think we need to get you to Parliament. You know, you need to you need to go beyond Agri SA, because these are crucial thoughts. These are deep thoughts. And you're so right about. I loved the part that you spoke about. That is, we don't have an issue of water supply. We've got an issue of water management, and the whole management issue speaks to the nature of how our economy is being run. We're selling so much of our goods. I mean, now water's being privatized. Who would have thought that we'd have to buy for water, or we'd have to pay for water in our own country? You know, the Woolworths grapes you're talking about, most of them are, imported, and yet we've got fields and fields that can generate that. So, Christo, please prepare your closing statement there, because I'm going to ask you to finish off your points when we close off there. But thank you so much for those contributions. And when we come back to you, Christo, please can you also just re-emphasize the 4 points that you told us about? I think the first one was quality, and then I lost the other 3. But as when we come back to you, please can you tell us about that? And then just Wynand, will go to you and then go to Emmanuel. Wynand, I just want to ask you a question. How do you think, and this is as an extension to some of the critical points that Mr. Reid has mentioned, how do you think we can forge partnerships, better partnerships with global platforms, those exchanges? I mean, we know that agriculture is also quite dominant in Poland, in the Netherlands. We know in Tokyo, China, the rice fields, there's just a strip of rice fields, in an allocated region, particularly for that investment. In Cuba, we know that the tobacco farms, and tobacco, it starts with the plant, just planting or putting the seed of that plant in the ground and harvesting it's a huge industry. How many smokers do we have? And not only in this continent, but in the world. And if you go to India, regions such as Hyderabad and Ahmedabad, where you have your spice farms as well. I mean, it's such a huge industry. So how do you think we can forge better partnerships at a global level, Wynand? And also, in your institution, do you guys facilitate exchanges with other students across countries?
I think firstly, I almost interrupted Mr. Van der Rede there just to say, can we just all unmute ourselves and give him an applause?
Absolutely.
I think he's really hit the nail on its head this morning.
That's
It's time that, and we're not talking politics here, it's time that every commercial company, every corporate company, every public institution, private institution actually wake up and smell the flowers. We've got to collaborate. If we're not going to collaborate, we're all going to reinvent the wheel, and we will be in this discussion year in and year out for the next 20 years. If we collaborate, we will make contact with Mr. Twala and Emmanuel and the likes, and we will take these conversations forward. And in 2 weeks' time, I will meet with both of them, and we will say, so how are we going to franchise this? And where are the opportunities to franchise this? And unless we do that, we are not going to move forward. What has happened with technology, and we deal with technology on a daily basis now, being in the online education business, we're just a small farm in the Politsi Valley, 20 kilometers out of town in the mountains. But we've built a company here that's got alumni from 22 different countries now. We've got students in 22 countries just by doing what we're doing from our little office here in the mountains. What we can offer to our students is world experts in anything. You mentioned spices and herbs and tobacco, and name any crop. Within the next hour, I can find you the world's leading experts in any crop, and I can arrange to bring them to the students in a live webinar from anywhere in the world at any time. That's what's happened with technology. We always have this thing that we sort of quote, and that is that technology has never been as slow. No, sorry, let me start again. Technology has never been as fast as it is at this exact moment today. What's the time? 12:10. Never has technology been this fast. But technology will never again be as slow as it is at 12:10 today.
I just got a mind zoom.
And that's exactly what it is. We are working in technology. We are working with access to the world experts. We don't need to be studying curriculum from 2003 or
100%.
3 decades ago. And this is agriculture. We're talking applicable to every one of these speakers that presented yesterday and today and tomorrow. We need, all industries need to collaborate. We all need to move forward. There's just so much opportunity that the world is basically at our fingertips. And if COVID has done anything for us, it is the fact that it's opened our eyes to the opportunities. And education can never go back to what it was. And if it does go back to what it was, we've missed the biggest opportunity of our generation. We need to now move forward. We need to now realize that collaboration is the way. We need to not reinvent. We need to take our hands. We need to work with the communities. Black, white, pink, purple, doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
We need to now all move forward and make South Africa great again. I don't want to sound like Trump. I've almost got the hair. But we need to take agriculture, and we need to now take agriculture to that level where we know it can train millions of people across our lovely continent.
And Reinhard, critical point there about collaboration. Diversity and inclusion doesn't eliminate the remnants of history. And I think that's what people need to understand. Collaboration doesn't mean we are excluding and we are undermining things that happened in the past where a certain group of people or Black people were disadvantaged. And I mean, if you go globally, there will always be some kind of trajectory that happened to a certain group of people. China was colonized. Who would have thought that a colonial country and continent would be the second largest economy in the world? So we all have, histories that challenged, our human rights, that challenged a people, but we've got to use that as a building block. And I think this is what collaboration is all about.
And use it as a guideline to guide us into the future, to not go back and make those same mistakes again.
Exactly.
We need to now move forward. We need to collaborate. We need to take hands, and we need to say, yes, this is what happened in the past. We all acknowledge it. We were all part of it. We all know what happened, but we're not going to move any further if we hammer on that all the time. We need to now look forward and say, what is in it for all of us? What is it that we can all do? What can we learn from each other? And yes, we've built this platform based on something that Mr. Van der Rede said earlier. Agriculture is about managing your risks. And that's what our training is all about. It's designed on how do I manage my risks. Unfortunately, the old outdated curriculum has not kept up with the times, and that is one of our biggest risks. We need to now ensure that we manage all our risks. And how do we manage our risks? We take from the people that has achieved and the people that have learned, and we pass that knowledge on to people that are still learning, that it needs to take over in the future. And once we've transferred that knowledge from the existing, the current, the successful corporates and the successful farmers, and we bring that to our youth, whether they implement it in their own businesses or they bring it into corporate agriculture, wherever they implement it, doesn't really matter. But we need to bring and identify all those risks and show them how to avert those risks, because farming is actually all about managing your risks. If you manage your risks, you're a successful farmer.
High risk, high return industry. And I like what you said about how do we then use our errors and mistakes and use them as expertise. So it's converting errors and mistakes into expertise that could be viable to create a great sector and a prosperous sector. Thank you very much, Wynand.
Sorry, I
Can we
just
go
want
to
to add
you?
one more thing, just about the water
Okay.
side. Sorry.
Oh no, sorry.
Just on water management. You're not going
Right.
to find a country better than managing their water better than the Netherlands. They are one of the
Absolutely.
leaders in water management. We are
Absolutely.
collaborating with them already. We are in a project with them, rolling out coursework with 6 TVET
Wow.
colleges starting next year. We need to,
Wow.
that shows you the importance of collaboration. Use the
Absolutely.
expertise out there, bring it into South Africa, bring it into Africa.
Yes.
Come and teach our
Yes.
people how to do it.
Absolutely. Wow, Wynand. Yeah, no. Crystal and Wynand, yeah, I'm just like buzzing. My mind is just going round and round because everything that we're speaking about has got to be done at ground level. And I'm glad that it's already being done with stakeholders like you that are involved. You really are producing tangible results. I just want to quickly go to Emmanuel. If you can answer this following question, how do you think we can eliminate poverty at a practical level? Because I think that, when we look at your national development plan, your, like you just said now, that former President Thabo Mbeki criticized it as a theoretical document. Aren't all our documents theoretical, in some of our institutions, and at a political space as well? But I think in Africa alone, how do we be so rich, yet so poor? You know what I mean? We've got resources, we've got arable land. Our grandmothers taught us to, plant, vegetables in our own spaces. And I mean, even the issue or notion of poverty elimination or eradication speaks to how we using, the areas that we have for urbanization. We using them as smart cities. I mean, you have in Joburg, Gauteng alone, your Lanseria has so much land, and yet you have a government that is saying it's time to convert that into a smart city. Why do we need to convert it into a smart city when it's actually one of the industrial hubs of Gauteng? And you have your proud Stellenbosch in Cape Town that is still retaining the essence of agriculture and development. If you go to some of your locations and townships, you see people are now paving and they're putting cement. So there's no space to plant a vegetable because we have this thing of urbanization, town planning that needs to be luxurious. And there's nothing wrong with that. But eliminating poverty has got to start with us at a ground level. What do we do with the spaces that we have? So, Emmanuel, if maybe you can answer further to say at a practical level, how do we eliminate poverty? How do we ensure food security, that people have food? Because if your stomach, remember, your stomach doesn't have eyes. So if you are hungry, you don't think about your dreams. You don't think about your vision. You don't think about what you need to achieve. You think about your daily bread. How do you ensure that you fill your stomach today and tomorrow and the next day? And that is something that I think is also denying young people of their potential to become who they need to be, because it's all about waking up and what do I need to do to provide for my family today? So that person doesn't have time to think about, oh, I want to be an artisan or I want to be an engineer. They're thinking about their daily bread. So, Emmanuel, over to you. How do we eliminate poverty at a practical level?
Oh, that's a tall order to ask of me to provide the answer to a question that so many have failed to address.
Yeah.
Frankly speaking, I could start by saying we need to look at how to empower people, because there was a bit of talk that we had here about a shift in mindset. This
Yep.
dependency mindset is something that we as people need to shift away from, particularly here in Africa. As Africans, we love to complain, and some comedians have actually joked that we down here in the South, we like to complain a lot more than others. So we need to shift away from that complaining and shift into a more action-oriented mindset. Someone spoke of the Chinese example, and one of the things that they have is an action-oriented mindset and a passion or a fanaticism of some sort towards Mother China.
They work for China, man.
One particular group, ethnic group in South Africa that I've come across is that of the Venda people, and they work for Venda. They work for the land. They work for the community.
So true.
They work for the development of that area of South Africa. So these are some examples that we can then try to replicate. Now, when I'll shift back to my franchising theory, and one of the things that we learn from that is it's a great way to transfer knowledge. So it is not per se that we would be looking at implementing it in the exact, franchising cannot be implemented the exact same way in each and every instance. So our research into this space, into the franchising space, it shows us more. The more we dig deeper, we realize that, and as has been said, for many models that are taken from other contexts, there's the need to adjust or to prod and shape the model to suit the particular context in which we find ourselves in. So, for instance, bringing in the experts from different areas around the world, the Netherlands example, and there are other examples as well of great educational systems there in Netherlands and in Northern Europe as well. So bringing in those examples, we need to look at what are the things that they are doing right. And can those work here? What can we learn? How can we apply those here in Africa? And that's what we in the academic world are trying to do. But I'll borrow or I'll ride on what Waynard said as a concluding remark, that the need for collaboration is imperative. And in attempting to solve the food security question, collaboration is the only way. For years, we have acted in silos, and the Chinese and the vendor examples that I mentioned, the collaboration is clearly evident in those communities. And that is why we see the successes that we see in those communities. So we need to replicate that in other African contexts, in the rest of the South African context as well. And that collaboration, bringing together government, bringing together academia, bringing together even the youth as well. My former employer came up with an initiative called Voices Unite. And what they did at In on Africa with Voices Unite is they're trying to bring together these players that we've mentioned, the government, the private sector, the students, to say, all right, let's have a conversation and let's put all of these in a platform whereby all views are heard, and the solutions that come out of it incorporate not just, it shouldn't be just a top-down thing from academics or private sector to say, these are the skills we want to give you as young people. But the young people themselves are saying, all right, we would like to play in this space. Sort of like what we see with Zamokutle, we would like to play in the agricultural space. So to bring in more young people, we need to have these conversations. So we need these platforms similar to Voices Unite. But we also need, and I think my biggest thing that I would suggest that we take away from this is also what Waynard was saying. Cape Media has done excellently to come up with this summit year in, year out. We do not want to get to the 20th year and we're doing this. We do not want to get to the 30th year and we're having the same conversations. In preparing for this, I looked at some of the videos of past, and we're saying similar things. So we've been having these conversations. So I would like to challenge us here, all of us who are participants in this summit of 2020, that let us take this COVID thing as, you know, a pivotal moment for us to say, no more talk, or when we meet and we haven't talked, what are the metrics that we are going to use to measure our impact? What is the impact that we would have had from now in 2020 till 2021 when this summit will hold again? What demonstrable evidence? And the thing there is, I keep bringing up the franchise model because it's a way to scale that is inorganic. It's not the organic way. It is it brings in a multiplier effect that I have no words to describe right now, but I would like to really suggest strongly that it's imperative that we look at how to bring all these people together so that we can come up with a model that will allow us to scale the case studies or the examples of what Waynard is doing, what Big Incha farming is doing, what Zamokutle is doing, and what these guys, what Mr. Reed and company are doing. So we bring in all this knowledge, we put it together, and we come up with a singular approach that can be applicable to different scenarios, that can work, and it takes into account the bureaucratic issues that smallholder farmers are facing. I'll give an example to surmise all these points, which is what one company is doing in East Africa, and they've expanded to Nigeria, they've expanded to Asia as well. And we came across this case study in our research of this company. I think they call one Acre Fund. And what they do, they take the equivalent of a quarter of a hectare, which is about an acre, and they have what people would refer to as the bottom of the pyramid people in the economy. They have people who were living off the land and were even struggling to live off their little piece of land. And we're talking 1,000% improvement in yields, in income. Farmers are moving from barely surviving on their crops to actually expanding to multiple income streams by buying cows and moving from growing just maize to having goats and sheep as well. So and there's also the element of solar and bringing in technologies. So yes, I agree with Mr. Reed that when we speak of technologies, before, in as much as we look at these fancy, or what some may term sexy technologies like the drones and the likes, and smart agriculture, we also need to look at that. When we say technology, we look at seed, we look at base things. So indigenous knowledge that we have here in Africa, it also plays a key part, because there's a lot of knowledge that people have. We talked of the Stockwells as well. That's an interesting one. But there's a lot of indigenous knowledge in farming that is being lost, and if not captured and then replicated or shared or taught to others, we will find that we're losing out on a lot. So tapping into that indigenous knowledge is what would also tailor make these solutions and key success factors that we see in other parts of the world, is what would tailor make them to be more suited for the African context, and South Africa in particular. So as I started out by saying, the people aspect of sustainability is key. So in as much as we are looking at environmental and economic prosperity, we also need to look at how do we ensure that people are fed so that they can work and they can be active contributors to the economy. And that happens when we empower people to be able to make use of whatever land that they have, whatever people are farming in small patches, even in what may be termed as concrete jungles. People are farming there. So a franchise model where we record these systems, we record this knowledge, and then we're able to transfer them in a simplified way, whereby the risks also for an entrepreneur who is just starting out, who like Zamakutle had mentioned, they would have this bureaucratic red tape that they have to go through. When they band together and when they're part of an umbrella organization, it may not necessarily be formalized as your KFC would be. It may be a cooperative of some sort, but it is at heart a franchise model. And such a model or a network model will allow those smallholder farmers to have a bigger say, to have a bigger voice when they band together, to be able to spread their risk amongst each other, so to speak. So, rounding up, we need to sit down and really go forward. And Cape Media, you guys have done an excellent job, and I would really charge you guys to let us get together and come up with a concrete plan of action beyond all these summits and so on. That's where I'll end. Thank you very much.
I'll pass on the message. I hope they heard. In case they didn't hear it, I'll hammer the message with the real hammer so that they get it. So thank you very much, Emmanuel. Okay, let's have our closing remarks. Mr. Twala, we can start with you, and then followed by Christo, and then followed by, so Christo, Mr. van der Ried, and then followed by Mr. Vaynard, and then Emmanuel. You can just quickly tie up the knots for us. Mr. Twala, can we have your closing remarks? Okay, Mr. Twala, we can't hear you. You're still on mute.
Sorry about that. I didn't notice. Okay, cool. I was just saying, I think like we all the panelists have said it all. Like we need to take more action, and like
Yes.
they say, we can. I mean, at Uncle, we can come up with the app, the drone, but that's innovation with collaboration. So
Yes.
we need to collaborate and work together and action, because we get to have these meetings, sit down, and at the end of the day, like Emmanuel said, at the end of the day,
Yes.
still the same thing. We repeat the same thing. We're just wasting time. I hope I'm not even doing the same now. But then we need to start actioning and do the right
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And I'll give Mr. Esbach a call just to check if he has called you regarding the meeting that he wants to set up. So
Cool.
I'll be checking in. I'll be that girl.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Phenomenal. Thank you very much for your contributions, Mr. Twala. Can
you.
we have Mr. van der Rieën? Your closing remarks?
Okay. Yes, just to repeat what I've said earlier, one, quality. In everything that we do, we are part of a global world, which takes no hostage. The emphasis is if you produce the best products throughout the world, people will buy it. Whether it's in mining, whether it's in whatever sector, that's what should the focus be. And yes, it costs a lot of money, but you know what? Money is not the issue. It's the mindset. And Dr. Ivy, you were so right. If you look at what has happened in a place like Korea, South Korea, how they've changed their fortunes. They were Ghana and South Africa were far ahead of a place like South Korea. What has happened? Those are the lessons that we should take to mind. The issue of aggregation. We must stop operating like we are islands. Come together whether via a stokvel, via whatever, to put that money into one pot and manage it so well that at the end of the day you are able to translate that into long-term wealth. The third thing is funding. We know the government hasn't got any funding. Land Bank is in big trouble. So how are we going to make sure that a new cohort of black farmers are enabled to start farming and contribute towards food production?
Yes.
And we will have to engage and find a way via whether it's crowdfunding, whether it's collecting our own funding to enable people to get money so that they can put the necessary things in place to start farming. And then the issue of water, need to address the issue of water. Black communities, and especially, let me stop talking about black communities. Let me rather refer to communities, all of South Africa, must start confronting municipalities and the electorate out there must start confronting government if they fail to, in terms of ensuring the water supply, basic services, etc., etc. And then the third thing is ownership. You know why countries remain poor? Because people, the land that they live on, that land remains in the hands of either a government or somebody else, whoever is the custodian. In countries where there's clear rules and regulations and where there is security of tenure, that land can be collateralized for other purposes. It can be sold so that you take that profit and invest in something else. I always say when I started off my teaching career, there was one thing that the Western Cape government at that time did. They gave us subsidies. And with that subsidy, I could buy a house. That house cost me 20,000 Rand. And I talk now about 30, 40 years ago. Right? But you know what? When my kids went to high school and to university, I had no extra money because they eat a lot. So most of the money was spent on food. But I could take my house to the bank as collateral. And with that money, I could send my kids to university. And after many years, I sold that, I bought that house for 20,000. I sold that house for 1.5 billion. Yay, it could have been very nice.
Yay, I would have gonna come to your office and knocked,
for 1.5 million Rand. And with that, I can now, create a pension fund or I can put it in another investment. So those 5 things are critical building blocks if we want to turn the fortunes around of Africans. And you look at South Africa, I mean, countries like Japan is basically on a rock. Taiwan is on the rock. South Korea is a piece of rock. South Africa is so blessed in many ways, but what do? We burn down buildings, we dug up the roads, we do all kinds of stupid things. We cannot, and we must stop being apologetic about it. You know, there's no reason for somebody who's frustrated about service delivery to break down. Rather use the tools at your disposal. We live in a constitutional democracy. Use your vote. Use your collective power to bring about change, not only at the personal level, but at the community level as well. We must change our mindset. We must change the way we think. And we must use the talents that God has given us to change our fortunes for the day. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you so much, Mr. van der Ried. Truly appreciate those insights. Yeah, no, I'm challenged, and I think really, Emmanuel, you're very right in saying we need to take these ideas, put them together. Cape Media needs to make a plan to get them to the president or whichever powers that be to make sure that they're implemented. So thank you for that, Mr. Esbach.
Yep, thanks. I'll be quick. I think I've said a lot. The takeaway here is, like Emmanuel said, we need to start somewhere. We need to challenge ourselves, and we need to come back here next year, and be able to show that we've actually made a difference. And not just in agriculture, in all industries. Key point: do not go and reinvent the wheel. If you don't know, ask for help. There are people that's better equipped to answer some questions in certain things. Go and ask them, work with them. Use the technology. Like I said, the technology changes by the second. And next year, this time, we won't be struggling to log in, and we won't, because there'll be new technology, and we'll all probably be doing it from wherever in the world while we're flying. Nobody knows. And then lobby for change. We need to go out there and we need to work together and lobby for change. And this is where I think we can play our part in getting some funding. Lobby for change, when I say that, I don't only mean with government, I mean with corporate world as well. The corporate world needs to be made aware that this is what we need as an industry to train our youth. And let's go to those industries and say to them, we need you to change your focus. We need you to say, we will give money to this and this and this, because that is what we want. Not just putting more money into things that's already been done. We need them to change their mindsets. And then, of course, collaborate. Let's collaborate. Biggest takeaway from every summit we've had in the coronavirus period is, let's collaborate. Let's not continue reinventing. Let's collaborate.
100%. Thank you very much, Mr. Esbach. Can we have Emmanuel, your closing remarks?
Right. I'll attempt to be quick.
You will attempt. No, Emmanuel.
I will be quick. No, I'm kidding. I will be quick. I think when I speak of action, I'll say that we can look at maybe 3 components of that. Firstly, we need to share knowledge. There's so much knowledge out there. We all have learnings, and we've done a bit of that here, and that's the central part of my challenge to Cape Media and the rest of us. We need to share knowledge. And that goes to the second aspect, which is that we need to get together. So we have these platforms, and distance is no longer an option. It never really was, but I mean, COVID has opened our eyes. Thank goodness for that. And so we need to get together and actually attempt. We need to attempt to make things happen. As an entrepreneur, I'll just say you need to start. So we may fail along the way, but in that failure, we would learn. And as Wena just said, no need to reinvent the wheel. So there are some areas or aspects where we shouldn't fail because someone else has failed there. And that's the importance of getting together and sharing the knowledge. Then we need to empower people. And that's I hope you're not losing me. Can you hear me? We need to empower people.
A bit, but we hear you. On the point.
We need to, all right. We need to empower our people because, and that means changing their mindsets. We need to share and educate them so that their mindsets can shift. And there's also should be a cultural shift as I said, from a dependency to an action-oriented to one of pragmatism. So we need to just try, if we cannot find a solution, I mean, if we do not have a solution, we make one. We make something work, but a man has to make a plan. And that is really what has to happen. Well, even a woman, in the case of agriculture, we do see examples of that. And so we need to teach people to learn. And that is the other aspect of empowering them. We need to teach our people to learn. And that's one of the key aspects of skills development that I'd like to leave with all of us. The main thing in today's world is not so much in the specific skill that you're learning at that moment, but in the learning to learn and to constantly invent and develop oneself such that one is always able to remain relevant, irrespective of the changes in the socioeconomic landscape. Thank you very much, Tabang. Thank you very much, everybody. And we need to collaborate. Everybody, we need to collaborate. That cannot be stressed enough. So the question that I'll leave with you, Tabang, and maybe you can pose that and we can see how. The question is how? How do we collaborate? Yes.
How do we collaborate? Well,
yes, we do have an answer to that, but yes.
I think I do. So maybe you can invite me to facilitate the meeting between all four of you, you see, so we can see what we can do. I will then do a record of decision, documentum, and then I will be responsible for pushing it further to make sure that somehow, somewhere it must be implemented. I was a former speechwriter to ministers in Parliament, so I can see what I can do and which buttons I can push. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Truly, truly insightful thoughts that you've given there, and you're very right. I think next year this time we need to come back with tangible evidence that we can say, okay, so we spoke about this last year, this is what we have. So thank you very much for your time, all of you, and I wish you all the best in the organizations that you're involved in. Let's keep moving, let's keep soaring, and definitely we will be collaborating soon. I'm going to hound Beverly to make sure that the collaborations do happen and that we meet and put all of these thoughts together into something more tangible. And let's see, we don't know in our networks how we can expand, and I'm sure there are viewers out there that are watching that would love to also be in touch with you. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Well then, that was Mr. Zamoguhle Twala, founder of CEO of AgriCool, Mr. Emmanuel Ekose, doctoral researcher at UNISA Graduate School of Business, Mr. Wynand Esbach, Chief Operating Officer at Agri Colleges International, and also Mr. Christo van der Riet, Deputy Executive Director at Agri SA. Thank you very much, gentlemen.